Hi guys, we're 2Ps in a drop pod. We're back. I'm Dan.
And I'm Ben.
And we haven't been reported for some of the things we said last time. Locked away in an asylum or in any form of jail. So we've come back to talk to you again. So thank you very much for that, guys. That's really cool. We've been blown away by all the comments. So thank you. Really appreciate it. And I know
thanks, guys.
Ben
Brilliant.
is just as excited as me, which is pretty excited, to be fair.
Yeah, definitely.
So this week, as normal, we're going to do our On the Hobby desk. So we've actually both managed to play some games and paint some soldiers, so we've got a bit to tell you about there. Moving into the Galaxy of War, there's obviously a lot going on there at the moment. 40k is buzzing around the community, buzzing for me and buzzing for Ben. So we want to have a chat about that, our first impressions of the game. I warn you now, that's going to be quite an excitable segment.
Yeah, and we need to deal with Dan's descent into heresy quite badly.
Oh. The Inquisition is coming.
Yeah.
I've locked my doors. So then we're going to have a little wander over to the Mortal Realms. We saw the announcement. We popped it up. I'm sure you guys caught it anyway. We've got Generals Handbook 2017 coming up. Really want to talk about what that means for my hobby and chat to Ben a bit about that as well. Be great to get some feedback from you guys on that as well and what you think about that direction from Gamesworkshop. And lastly, we go into the wilds. We're gonna have a little bit of a chat about a couple of the other games we play. So X-Wing, also Saga. Ben has invested in the Alien versus Predator game. Getting very excited about the dropship model.
Oh yes, I am.
So I'm sure we'll cover that. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. You go grab whatever refreshment you need to be able to stay awake through the next hour or so of us rambling on, and we'll be back soon.
Hi guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about what's going across our hobby desk at the moment. It's been a pretty exciting time for us getting ready for our 8th edition Tale of Many Gamers. And I've been working on my Space Wolf force, and I think Dan's been working on some Vile Heresy. I keep seeing photographs of skulls and twisted vehicles across our Facebook screen. And what do you have to say for yourself, Dan?
Blood for the Blood God!
I think there's intervention in order. So we'll start throwing loyalist memes at you until you
So I
repent.
should say right now, Ben, that Joshua is asleep next door, so I had to tone down the shouting then a little bit.
Oh, right.
Just so I don't wake him up with cries of blood for the blood god, because to be honest, at 11 months old, that's likely to be damaging for the future.
Well, yeah, and we don't want him ending up like you, really.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Now, come on. We had this debate last week, so this is all about providing people with a platform to play against somebody else, isn't it?
I bought into that. I did. I bought all that crap, and then I saw you reveling in it over the last week, and thought, yeah, no, he's gone. He's completely devoted himself. So I don't buy it anymore. Don't buy it at all.
We will talk a bit more about that, because some of you guys obviously know your heretics really well. So I popped up a picture of a skull of Khan the Betrayer, and a couple of people jumped straight on that and knew what that was. So that guy's finished now, and he took to the battlefield this past week, and what a machine.
Yeah.
He is absolutely awesome. Joined by me finishing off a couple of rhinos, and I'm now onto some skull cannons. So they're sat next to me at the moment. The wash, a liberal amount of Agrax Earthshade, is currently drying while I talk to Ben for your listening pleasure. And
over a corn red base, is that right, Dan?
Over a corn red base, yeah. It's quite cool actually. So sorry, Ben, you were going to talk about Space Wolves, and I've just leapt it. I've got so excited about Chaos.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly my point. It's just
It's gone bad. I'm just kicking off. So yeah, with the corn, I I get the cornred base paint. I've still got some of the cans of spray. I'm lucky for that. Balthazar gold on all the gold bits, Xandri dust on all the bone areas, and lead voucher on the metal. I said say lead voucher. I use that sometimes, but I've also got it's made by Cote d'Arms, and it's called gunmetal, and it's a really good likeness to bolt gunmetal.
You see, I don't like lead voucher at all.
No, so
I really don't.
It's the consistency
that
bothers me with lead voucher.
Yeah.
It's not as smooth. You know, I have to say, generally, and I said this last week, I really like the Games Workshop paint range.
Yeah,
I've got them all. I use them a lot, but the metallics, some of the metallics, the new ones they brought out recently, very, very good. But some of the metallics aren't as strong, and lead voucher for me, it's just not as smooth enough. So this Cote d'Arms is 142 gunmetal. A good friend of mine, Ant, who runs Cross Swords Games Club, he pointed out to me how good this stuff was, and now every time I go to a game show that sells it, I pick up a pack of about 6 pots and keep it on the shelf. So, yep, really like that. That all goes on, and then it's Agrax Earthshade over the top of that, and then you can start building up your layers. So, yeah, it's quite a simple scheme, but it's quite striking on the tabletop.
Yeah, no, I liked it.
Although you go a bit mad. It's like red and brass, red and brass, red and brass.
Yes. Well,
so, and Ben, you've been trying something out. Haven't you painting one?
I have. Yeah, I have. I've been trying a different way of doing my Space Wolves. So the first squad I did, I undercoated in Fang, and then highlighted up from through Rust Grey and into Fenrisian Grey, with the Fenrisian Grey being just a really fine highlight around the edges. But in an effort to try and speed things up, I undercoated with the Fang spray, which I really like, and then base coated the whole model in Rust Grey, and then I've done a glaze back with Fang, re-highlighted with Rust Grey, and doing the edges in Fenrisian Grey. It doesn't sound like there's less steps, but it is actually much quicker, and the model looks a little cleaner. Not quite so much unnecessary shading right in all the small cracks, and I think it has a better overall look. And I've gone for a bit more weathering this time. We're going to put pictures up of our projects, so we'll be able to see what the hell we're talking about. It's really difficult to get an impression just from what we're describing, but I think that's turned out quite nicely.
We could pioneer painting miniatures through the medium of sound.
Well, yeah. Gently talking people through how to do paint a model with voices like Barry Manilow. Mate, it's a hit. It's an instant classic. That's gonna podcast number 3.
That is gonna be amazing.
Definitely. So yeah, that makes up my.
I reckon Elton John. You can tell everybody this is your glaze.
Half our listeners have just switched off.
That's the end of that.
So yeah, that's my squad. I'm planning to do a rune priest to go with not a rune priest, sorry, a wolf priest to go with those, and that'll be my first 2 parts for my Tale of Many Gamers.
Excellent. And are you varnishing them when you're done?
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's important, because when you're constantly picking them up off the table because my corn have slain them, you don't want any of the paint to come off.
Yeah, that's definitely the reason why, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, let's go back to talking a little bit about, so people don't think I'm just narrow-minded Imperial. The one of the models you painted is one of my favourite character models that Games Workshop has on there. But the Karma the Betrayer is so full of energy. It literally looks like he's just about to run across the table. I think he's an awesome model, regardless of how vile and heretical he is. I really have toyed with the idea of buying him just to paint him. So yeah, he's one of my favourites.
Yeah, he goes together really, really nicely. It's a good example of the newer technology that they're using to have really good construction.
Yeah.
The detail's really, really crisp. There's some very small detail on there that's crisp, which you can pick up nicely.
And layered
really,
detail.
Really good fun to paint. Yeah.
Yeah, and a really good example from the Space Wolf range of that is Ulrich the Slayer. You know, the skull necklaces, the tooth necklaces. You know, layered detail, not just flat onto the model, but actually looks like it's there in a 3-dimensional kind of sense. and you can't make that kind of stuff out of metal, and I don't think you can really do it out of resin either, if we're being honest. So yeah, I think it is the character models that they're bringing out are really good examples of using plastic technology to make outstanding character models. That if you took back and showed me when I was 18, 19, I wouldn't have been able to tell you they were plastic. I'd have thought they were metal.
No, absolutely, totally agree. I must say before we talk about the game, because I know you've had your first game of 8 since we spoke. A first game for a long time.
Yes, my first game for a very long time. Yeah.
And I've played, but I just need to say, for the love of God, people, sub-assemblies. Use sub-assemblies. I am building these skull cannons, and why? If I could go back to about a year ago when I built them, I would slap myself around the face. Because why I built them without sub-assemblies, I do not know. I'm there like twisting them and trying to get a brush in, and I'm like, I could have left this bit off and hit it with the airbrush.
Yeah.
Muppet. So please, I got overexcited, I think. I wanted to see them finished. I have managed to pull a couple of bits off to do, but sub-assemblies, definitely the way forward. My pain is your gain, people.
You say that, Dan, but I'm going to give the counter-argument. It's worth me saying I completely agree with you, but at the same time, there's a lot of people who don't have the time to paint all the time, or even just a few hours a week, and they want those models out and on the table, and it's really hard to sort of put a sub-assembled model on the table. You end up with some random weird-looking bit to represent your heretic cannons or whatever the hell you call them. So
I've got an image of Chaos Space Marines being fired across the
like clowns, like they are clowns.
Like clowns, yes, like clowns. Very funny.
But seriously, so I can understand why people do it, because they want their models out there and on the table. And I think I can understand that. I can.
Oh yeah, and so do I. I mean, I'm one of these strange types that won't use stuff unless it's painted. Generally,
yeah.
And I'm fortunate in that I've got a fair bit of painted stuff now, which helps. And yeah, you're right. I have seen, and if he's listening, Jeremy, this is a shout out to you. Metal Marathi, held together with sellotape. No joke.
Yeah, it's dedication, man.
So, brought to you by the same guy who used a Lego dragon in a game of Warhammer Fantasy. So, absolute hero, Jeremy. But, yeah, you've got to weigh it up, I suppose. But for me, just from a speed perspective, the sub-assemblies are really, really helpful.
Yeah, and you can take that right down. I don't ever glue a bolt gun or a long arm weapon onto a Marine until I've painted his chest now. Never. But it does mean when you're playing, you're like, is that dude a plasma gun or is he a bolt gun?
Well, and it's such an arse to line up the guns, the arms.
Yeah.
That's what I get stressed about.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's sub-assemblies. I'm quite passionate about them, like many things.
So game-wise,
you sponsored by Sub-Assembly Man. Right. Anyway, quick.
You need a costume now, Sub-Assembly Man.
Yes. No, let's move on before I start describing it.
So, my game was at the new gaming club that was just set up. Really nice bunch of guys. Changed my impression of battle mats. I've been sort of toying with the idea of battle mats for things like X-Wing, where you can have the space in the background. But to have them for 40k and Age of Sigmar, I've always been a little bit, I suppose, reluctant is the right word. Much prefer a kind of three-dimensional table. But these make sense at a gaming club. I thought they were brilliant. Really simple, easy to pack up, easy to put out. But I'm getting off the game. The game was brilliant. Played against Ross. Shout out to Ross. Thank you very much. And played Blood Angels versus Space Wolves. And Sanguinor was my version of Khorne in your game, mate. He went through a squad of blood claws like they were targets in a training room. It was quite appalling. And we have sort of spoken about whether or not characters now in hand-to-hand combat are kind of the new thing, because they both both of our games we've had characters that have made mincemeat of lesser soldiers, haven't they?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering whether that's going to be a theme. Things I learnt, that flamers are absolutely preposterous in Overwatch, and I just dirty.
You want to try charging a Land Raider Redeemer. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
That's one thing I learnt, and the other thing I learnt was that if I compare it back to what we'll talk about this in the 40k segment, but if we compare it back to how long it took me to learn 2nd edition all those years ago, this was a joy to pick up. Actually, it was really quick. I was back into it as if very quickly. Really enjoyed it.
I think what's really exciting for me, mate, is you played that game, and then a few days later, you pinged me a picture, and you were full in to paint in some more Space Wolves. It was quite clear that the excitement had carried across, and it was driving you on into your painting hobby. Yeah. That is so exciting, and it's great to hear you've got that gaming club, because lots of people play or collect the hobby, do the hobby for lots of different reasons. But I think certainly you and I enjoy most of the aspects of the hobby.
Yeah, definitely.
To different degrees. Like, we enjoy certain bits more than others or what have you. But having the whole package will always be better than just a few bits of it.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah, and it's something that we spoke about last week. I've struggled to get games in because of location and time. And I mean, they're even talking of moving it into my hometown. So... it's all joys really for that.
Into Bodmin?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to
Whoa.
In the back room of.
Then you'll be able to say it's gone Bodmin.
Yeah, in the back room of a pub as well. So it literally couldn't be better.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I think worthy of travelling from Bristol to go to that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That'd be
awesome.
Be brilliant.
Yeah. So that was me. It was only a small game, just so I could get used to the rules and get back into it, but. It was definitely a real joy to do that.
Cool.
So over to you and your
over to me.
Debauchery over in Bristol independent games.
So yeah, absolutely. So my corn, some of you might have seen the pictures. My corn took to the field against the Sons of Sanguinius. Last night actually. Yes, yesterday. So I got to play down at Bristol Independent Gaming. They also use gaming mats, which I love. I've got a few of those, big fan of those, and like Ben says, really convenient. So we played down there, played against my friend Tom. Definite shout out to Tom, bit of a hobby hero of mine. Keeps me excited. He's a nut for the Horus Heresy, so it was nice to drag him away and play a bit of the new 40k. But when you've got a guy that you can pick up and play a game and have fun, and they live so close you can see their house out of the window, you're very lucky. So that's awesome. First game of 8th edition. Unsurprisingly, people won't be shocked. I really enjoyed myself. Really enjoyed the game. It was very, very fluid, I felt. I was worried going into it that I wouldn't like the change to the vehicle rules, because I'm a bit of a tank interest. I like tanks. I think they're cool.
And there's a lot of people that were concerned about that, really.
Yeah. I have to be honest, didn't make any difference for me. Like, it didn't make any difference in a negative way. Yeah. Obviously, they play differently, but a Land Raider was still absolutely nails. Yeah. And I made reference to it just now, but charging a Land Raider Redeemer that can overwatch with 2 Flamestorm cannons, that has no arcs of fire, so it just rolls 2d6 hits, was bad, actually.
Stupid is the word you're looking for. It was stupid.
Well, you got to throw the chaos into it. I actually tried to claim that if you set possessed Space Marines on fire, they would be more dangerous and scary. But that wasn't allowed. It's not represented by the rules. So I think that's definitely something for the FAQ guys to pick up there. But yeah, it was amazing. It was really, really good. The Rhino thing, getting out of Rhinos and being able to charge, is definitely back with vengeance.
Yes.
Corn Berserkers are incredible. Yep. They get to pile in an attack twice, which doesn't just double their attacks, it actually allows them to wade into the enemy and attack further. And then Khan, oh my days. Oh my days. So he's in a rhino, he jumps out, runs around a corner. Oh, there's a squad of blood angels. I'm just going to charge them. Oh, there's fire bouncing off my arm. I don't care. Oh my God. 10 blood angels are dead. It's just insane. It's just insane. So hitting on 2s, 6.
The blood angels had never a very good week, really, did they?
No. But they will be back. You know, it was interesting because afterwards Tom and I were discussing it on the way back in the car, and there's, you know, it by playing you build up an idea of tactically obviously what you want to do next time. So it'll be interesting to see what comes along next time and how Tom constructs his army, changes his army. But it was really nice to go and get some soldiers. I haven't played with my Khorne army for a long time. And it was nice to get them on the table, play a game, try out new edition, and get really excited.
So, on the topic of new editions, I think we went to draw a line under our hobby desk's tails and move on to 40k next, guys. So, after a cup of tea, we'll be right back with you to talk about the new 8th edition 40k.
Catch you soon, guys. Welcome back, guys. Welcome to the Galaxy of War. We were talking about names for segments, and I got excited and went with Galaxy of War. So, thumbs up if you like. Thumbs down. Listeners, something out. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. It's great to have you guys on. So, quick, move on, Ben. Move on. We want to talk about
8th edition 40k.
We do indeed. What a surprise, eh?
Yeah, it's dominated the last couple of weeks of wargaming, really, I think, across pretty much everything.
Well, we recorded this on the eve of its launch, didn't we, last time?
Yeah. And my box didn't turn up on time. Dan's did. Mine turned up on Thursday, so I was... Do
you know what one would call that? The gift of chaos.
Oh, man, you need a slap. So I was pretty disappointed, but when I got it... because we want to talk about unboxing, don't we? And I think when we talk about unboxing, I love the starters kits, the box games, whether it's the Death Watch one or it's the Horus Heresy one. Sorry, they're just there's a thing when you open them. They're just fantastic. They're packed full of stuff, and you get the feeling of a new beginning. And I always like them because they bring me right back to opening my 2nd edition box set. And just being overwhelmed by all of the bits that was in there, and just spent the next week just solidly reading. I had, for the first time since the 2nd edition, the closest feeling I've had since opening that box.
Do you know? I'm so glad you. So it's interesting when you. So we both work for Gamesworkshop. We've both own a considerable number of toy soldiers.
Yeah.
And when you open the box, you. Sometimes, especially when you're building armies, so I will often build 3 or 4 units of something in one go if I'm building, or 3 or 4 boxes if I'm building a big unit, and you get a little bit you're just opening boxes, building models, and the nice thing about a box set, the box games, is they always, you get that kind of excitement factor, don't you? Whereas maybe when you're just opening a tactical squad, it's maybe not the same, because you've done it so many times, but with this game, and you just alluded to it there, it was amazing. It was such a buzz.
It's incredibly well presented.
This game came with a purity seal
on the model
box.
Oh, yes.
So, and I have to say, this is my level of ridiculousness. I managed to carefully peel it off.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah, I did, and I stuck it onto some sticker paper. So I've actually managed to save it in my excitement.
Oh man, I in my excitement, that bad boy was torn. It's just straight through that. It's a really.
Mine sat in the cellophane, and I just looked at it for about half an hour because I was so excited about opening it that I was almost afraid to open it in case I wasn't as excited as I wanted to be when I opened it.
Yeah.
And to have it into the different segments and the slip case, and Oh, you can almost hear a choir of like gothic sort of angelic figures come floating in.
I think we're coming across as fanboys here a little bit.
Are we?
Oh yeah, just a tiny bit.
Do you like Gamesworkshop? Do you?
Yeah.
They're all right.
So I think for me, one of the things that was really, really nice is having the rule book in the box, not just a tiny little pissant, A5 thing. You got the actual hardback rule book in the box, and the last time that happened was 3rd edition, and that's a really nice welcome back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you get a cool, handy little fold-out thingy-mabob that has the core rules on it, so you've still got that sort of easy-to-handle thing.
And if anyone knows how to laminate a multi-folding page out of cardboard, then please tell us, because I need to laminate that before it just turns into a doggy toilet roll. It's going to happen. So, I mean, the box-wise, the models in it are spectacular too, and there's something about them...
Have you built any yet?
No, and I'll tell you why, because I want to do them Space Wolf, and I'm plotting and trying to work out how to best integrate the Space Wolf bits into them without making them look ridiculous.
I thought you were going to collect the Nurgle.
Yeah. I'm going to leave that silence in. I'm not going to edit that out. That's my feeling.
Right, okay.
Nurgle are just vile. I've always said I can't work out. If you were a Chaos Marine, or in fact anybody, and you were seduced by the Chaos Gods, and you went to like a Chaos reunion, and you looked around the room, and you chose a Nurgle, you would think, seriously, what the hell was I thinking? I have a tentacle coming out of my armpit, and that dude's 8 foot tall with muscles the size of a rhino. I made the wrong choice. It's true. You can't deny that I'm right.
No, I won't deny that you're right.
Tentacle coming out of your armpit. I mean, what is that about?
I think there's a great little bit where it points out there's like it's one of those drawings where they've got a model and it looks like imperial text referring to different parts of the Nurgle Marine. Yeah. And there's an arrow and it points to this like random tentacle that's coming out next to his boot, and it says something like random mutations with no apparent use. It's fantastic.
Other than to feel the floor in front of your feet for what?
Yeah, just to check. Is the floor still there? I don't know. So I've not built any of mine either, because I'm still on.
Mate,
this...
just say it. You're enthralled by chaos. You're just stuck in the lap of corn.
I'm still struggling. I really want to just go mad about Primaris, but I just haven't. I love them. I do love them. I'm just still struggling with this relationship between them and sort of your standard Space Marines.
Yeah.
And when I get over that,
you don't want them in the same army, do you?
No.
I think that's important to sort of voice, because that is their options, isn't it? Your options at the moment is to have them integrated into your Space Marine armies, or to create a completely new separate Primaris army, whether that's from the same chapter or a completely different chapter. And I bought Dark Imperium, the novel, and Dan did too, to try and see where Games Workshop were going with the Primaris, and I had mixed feelings about it. So things that I really enjoyed, I like the fact that the Primaris weren't just a thing that popped out in the last 100 years. They'd been in stasis, in and out of stasis for 8,000 plus years. That kind of added a depth to them that I quite liked. I liked the fact that the Primaris had an awful lot of respect for the Astartes. They didn't look down on them. They saw them as brothers, not as the old useless has-beens. And there's some great relationships in the book between an Astartes Psyker and a Primaris captain, where the Psyker is just schooling this captain on chaos, basically treating him like a child in some ways. And that's another thing that I quite like. The Primaris always came across quite naive at times, a little bit boyish, childish.
Yeah, we were talking about that, weren't we? I was, yeah.
And I
really like
that.
it. Yeah, it reminds me of the Legions, really, in the way that when they were first faced by chaos.
Yeah.
Well, they were just completely in the dark, really. So the difference here is that Primaris know about chaos, but what they don't necessarily know or recognise the threat of is the way it can try and affect you.
Yeah.
So the captain in question is like wigging out at one point, isn't he? And kicking some butt. And he is feeling like he's doing the Emperor's work, but then that librarian comes across and like banishes the chaotic power that's trying to subvert him.
Yeah.
And he realises, and he's like, "Oh dear." So, I like that. But it's interesting what you say about how they really respect the Astartes, because one of the things I didn't like, there's a reference to, it's Calgar, and he's talking about, I think it's Calgar, and he's talking about how Gilliman has said that...
No, that's Felix, that's the captain I was just talking about.
Is it?
He's reflecting on how the Primaris are being used for the difficult operations, the real hard-hitting ones, and that Calgar was making no secret of the fact that actually the Astartes time...
Gilliman makes no secret.
Yes, sorry.
The time of the current Astartes is those, their days are numbered, I suppose.
I thought that's the term he uses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have such a problem with that, to be honest, because Primaris are really cool. I think it's just because it's not... For 20 years, Space Marines, as they were up until the launch of 8th edition, they just drive the hobby. They have driven the hobby for me.
Yes.
And at the moment, the Primaris ultimately is an incomplete package, which is what you completely understand, because they've only just come out. But there are things about Astartes, drop pods being a big one that I love, and things like the tactical squad with the one heavy trooper and one assault trooper. It's just a massive change.
Yes,
it is a massive change.
And there's no sign that the Primaris tactical squads or interceptors. Is that, no, I can't remember the names yet.
Intercessor squad.
Yeah, there's no sign that they're going to move towards that one heavy.
No, in fact, actually, in Dark Imperium, it talks about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Again, the same captain talks about it, and how they feel that it makes tactical options clearer or something. I'm not quite sure the phrase he uses, by having single squads. And there are some dudes in there with flamethrowers in their fists and missile racks.
Yeah, the kind of future Terminators of the Primaris, and aren't they? I forget what he called them. But you meet the Reavers for the first time in there, because they're a new model, they're a new theme, and they haven't gone down very well, really, I don't think. There was a lot of good points being raised. For example, the skull helmet really is completely pointless when it comes to intimidating somebody when you're nearly 9 foot tall. It's just a ludicrous addition, and actually the skull helmet is a really important kind of character thing for the Space Marine chaplains. And I can see that point. And a lot of people don't like the legs and the aesthetic. For me, I think I quite like the concept of them. And I think that they're going to be quite a cool unit. I'm not so sure on this 2-part simple to make plastic kit version of them. I think for infiltration and fear units, they look a little bit like they're posing for a photograph. Whereas the Primaris in the box set, those guys look like they're in combat. They've got their weapons up. They look like they're advancing. You know, there's a dynamism about them. They're not necessarily look like they're flat out, but there's a realism about the poses that they've chosen to use. I think the Reavers are almost taking a step right back to those kind of stupid static positions that you saw in sort of the early noughties. And I'm not keen on them. Having said that, one of the things that I've realised a long time ago about Games Workshop models is that quite often I have to see the model, and the model is usually 10 times better than the photograph. But we'll see.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to say all along that I think seeing the models in the flesh is really important, before making your mind up. And also, what's interesting is they seem to be expanding the amount of starter box sets really early on. So we've just seen a couple of extra starter sets added to the Age of Sigmar range. We saw, well, actually, there was one, Storm of Blood, that came out probably 6 months, 12 months ago. No, this is something different. This is was like a little box. It's only 20 quid.
Oh yes, yeah.
And the magazine thing, and that came out a while ago. And then they've brought all this out. So the Reavers at the moment make up part of that, but I have no doubt that we will see them come out as a
multi-part kit.
Yeah. I'm sure of it. But it is great to see Games Workshop really, well, the design studio supporting the frontline stores with product to get people to play in the hobby. I'm really, really
different
excited.
Entry points.
Different entry points. And do you know,
and that's key,
I can remember sat having conversations with other Games Workshop managers as a Games Workshop manager and saying, I don't understand why, the most important thing is to get more people to come in, because yes, it's very important, really important to retain current custom, and Games Workshop forgot that for a while, or seemed to, and they've gone back to doing that and doing it really well. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how well you treat your customers. For one reason or another, some of them will stop buying your product. It might not be because they don't like you or like your product, but financially, people's situations change. Yeah. So you have to add new people. And so I always found it weird that the studio, which was the most expensive part of creating product that Games Workshop has, didn't do more to support that process. So it's really exciting to see that. Really exciting.
Yeah. And they've changed the names, aren't they? Because when I first started, the boxed game was called the Starters Kit, and now the boxed game is the boxed game. It's the full bells and whistles, the hardback rulebook, a whole ton of amazing models, everything you need to start. Whereas the Starters Kit is aimed at a lower price point. It's 50 quid. It's the same as the old starter kits, but you get everything. You get a small battle mat. You get your first piece of scenery. You get a bunch of models.
That is genius.
You get the rules.
Genius.
You get everything you need to start playing the game at a different price point. And that box set you were talking about for Age of Sigmar, 20 quid, with the rules in and a handful of models. I mean that just makes sense, doesn't it? Why haven't they?
So how many times did we've both been there. Yeah. You go through the whole caboodle. You run a painting intro. Kid is buzzing. Then you run the game, game, and you smash it out of the park. They're fired up with so much excitement.
And you can see the dad in the background looking at the prices, thinking, "Crap."
Yeah, and then you go over and you start talking about what they need, and the reality is, yes, there were times when people would go, yeah, that's fantastic, and drop 200 quid, bam, and buy it, and that happened, and actually that made it really important that every time you ran an intro or you were introducing somebody to the hobby, you tried to make sure they went home with the stuff they needed, but the number of times that they just couldn't commit to that, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Far outweighed that. But actually what was really important is that they left with something. Anything. Actually something that I used to do a lot is give out a lot of painting intro models, just so that they took something away which they then had to bring back to the store. If that can be a £5 magazine or a £20 box, £5 for a magazine, that's really nothing. On an outing, on a shopping trip, if your kid was like, I'd like that £5 magazine, I don't think that's a massive.
Well, it's there's always going to be £5 will always be too expensive for somebody.
Well, yes, it's always relative, isn't it?
But
it's going to be too expensive for a lot less people.
Yes, that's the point I was very inarticulately trying to make. But
So generally we've been quite pleased, haven't we? Dark Imperium has some really good bits in.
It does,
the
but
rule
it's
book-
a book of two halves.
Yeah, well, I think somebody asked me about it the other day. I said, I think it's 73% awesome.
Yes.
And they were like, what? And I was like, well, there's some really great stuff in it. The beginning is just awesome. The opening stuff is really, really good.
That
in
drop,
fact, the
drop from
whole
the
wrapping
dropship.
up of the Crusade stuff, that drop, that Space Wolf is brilliant.
Yes.
That Space Wolf is, you've got to wish me luck.
No, hang on,
What?
hang on.
Don't be superstitious.
Can you go back? Could you just say that again so everyone could hear?
What? That Space Wolf is awesome.
There we go. That's it.
They are awesome. I was a bit confused then. I was like, what? He was. It's the fact that he was not... First he was superstitious, and they were like, what are you doing? And then he's like, yeah, but it's my 13th drop. To which one of them says, yeah, but that's the number of the Primarch's Legion. And he's like, yeah. And they got split into lots of little pieces and sent all over the galaxy. And I don't want to be split into pieces. It's great. And then they're on top of that barricade, and they're like, right, we've been ordered to hold here.
And he's like, sod that, I'm getting stuck in.
And he looks over the edge and he just leaps off into all the enemies. It's brilliant. Yeah. So yeah, it was nice to see that they retained their traits, wasn't it?
It did. And if I was going to criticise it, they were all made a bit too archetypal, but it was really nice to see those Unnumbered Sons units where the Primaris were working together, wearing the livery of their Gene Father, and fighting together and breaking down those barriers, because it does annoy me in some ways that the Dark Angels rocked up to Fenris and thought, oh, yeah, this is a fair shot to just start bombarding the planet. And, you know, wankers, basically. Why the hell are you doing that? And Gilliman has clearly seen that there's a problem, and he's fixed it. He's fixed it by integrating all those Marines with each other and then splitting them out into their chapters so that those Space Wolves can go back and go, actually, you know, I've met a Dark Angel, fought alongside him, he's a brother, you know, those guys aren't as bad as you think they are.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really cool thing, because the relationship between him and the Dark Angel, they were still that kind of friendly banter, but you could clearly tell that they were, you know, solid. And and that for me was a really cool part, because actually I would quite like to do an Unnumbered Sons Primaris army, because I think that could be awesome.
Yeah. Well, is it they've
really
got? They've
colourful.
got the chapter icon, but with a grey chevron across it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, not their chapter icon. They're kind of Legion icon, I suppose. You know, going right back to the, you know.
Oh,
Ultra.
right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right back to the Gene Fathers.
So we knew we were going to talk about that book a fair bit. I just want to go back and discuss the actual rule book.
Yeah.
That was in the box set, because we said we were really excited that the main rule book came in there. It's great. It's another really high quality book, hardback, which I really like as a collector. I like to have things in hardback. They look good on the shelf. So really, really good. I think for me, one of the things that I would have liked to see more of were the sort of epic battle displays where they set up loads of miniatures and loads of cool terrain. And there is one in there. There's a really nice one in there. But I remember thinking as I was going through it, right, well, hopefully on the next page, or hopefully on the next page. So that would have been nice to see more of, although I am lucky in that I get to go to Warhammer World and they got massive displays there. And they're putting in some new ones soon, actually. So we need to do another road trip then.
Yeah, we do. And we saw them building them at Warhammer Fest.
Yeah. But so that was just one thing I would have liked to have seen a bit better. I'm still getting my head around navigating the book when I'm playing. So I think maybe some little post-it notes need to go in. But generally, really nice. I just before we started recording today, I decided I'd quite like to do some Planet Strike. So I need to read through that section and dig out some of my Planet Strike terrain, because, yeah, I just want to play some... I'm just really buzzing for playing games this year. And I think this version of the game is going to make that a lot easier.
My favourite was always City Fight. I love City Fight. I don't know why, because it's not quite so epic as Planet Strike or you know, the kind of big dramatic games. It's got something about it. I suppose it's like the enemy at the gate kind of feel. I really like it.
I would agree. I think City Fight would probably be my favourite. I just think it's probably, of all of them, it takes the highest amount of input from a creating the table point of view.
Yes, yeah.
And even though there are great kits and there are some fantastic MDF things online and ways to set it up, but if you want to create a battlefield that is immersive, quite a lot of effort and
multi-layered.
And at this point, I have to say, I built three of the big City
We built
Fight.
a really great City Fight table for an intro board.
We did, yes.
Yeah, really, really.
Of which bits of it, until very recently, were still at Bristol Independent Gaming. Would you believe?
Were they now?
Yeah.
How did they make it all the way up there from Plymouth?
Oh, so they
the vagaries of Games Workshop. Let's leave it at that.
No, they were gifted to Crossswords Gaming Club, I believe, by Games Workshop Plymouth when they went through the stage that we don't talk about of getting rid of stuff that wasn't just the kits.
Yes.
I know you're seething. You're seething. We'll have to talk about that another time, maybe. And so they were gifted to Crossswords, and then Crossswords ended up moving all their scenery on to Giant's Lair, which was in Plymouth, and then Giant's Lair shut and moved to Bristol and became Bristol Independent Gaming, and took all that terrain with it. So that's how they ended up in Bristol, and then Jim took over completely Bristol Independent Gaming and grew it into the mighty beast that it is now becoming.
Well,
so that's how
a potted history of one of our pieces of terrain.
Yeah, but I built a big city once, and my dad threw it in the bin.
Oh yes, you've told me about
accidentally.
That. If your dad is listening, that's shame on you.
Well, to be fair to him, he was trying to clear out his house. He was going for a lot of stuff. He asked me to pick up all my stuff. I picked it all up and said that's everything, and I forgot it. And it was devastating. More because of the time put in than anything, but these things happen.
I wanted to do a City Fight board where it was all LED'd up, and I've mentioned this on the Facebook page, I think. But so it was lit with, maybe lighting, so it looked like there was fires under rubble and all that sorts of stuff. And then when people are playing games on it, like, cut the lights in the room, so the only thing they've got is one of those little reading lights for their books, and the lights on the table to make it really immersive and really dramatic. That's definitely on my list of hobby goals.
Do you know what? That would be amazing, and then get one of those laser pointer pens.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's going to happen.
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the cost of the LEDs is a bit prohibitive, but not too prohibitive, I don't think. If you chip away at it, what I'd like to be able to do is create it so it had magnets. Like there's magnet connectors, so that you didn't have to plug things in. You could just magnet it on, and it would, give its charge from that.
Oh yeah.
Things to think about.
Nothing too detailed then.
No.
Not too much work.
I don't. Yeah. Well, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it right.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You don't
no
have
point
to convince
pissing
me.
around with half-assed measures.
No, absolutely not. Right, Ben.
It's time to drift across to the mortal realms, isn't it, Dan?
It is time to make for the mortal realms and leave the galaxy of war.
Do we need to get you a sedative before we start this section?
No. We've recorded a little bit later this week just so that I'm a little bit calmer when we get onto the Age of Sigmar. But it is a great game, mind. In fact, let's not talk about it in the 40k segment. Thanks, guys, for listening. We're just going to go and have a short breather. We hope you join us again in a minute for the Mortal Realms.
See you in a bit, guys. Hi guys, welcome back. We're going to talk about Age of Sigmar now in our Mortal Realms segment. We got quite a special release, the Generals Handbook, and Dan's got a few things to say about it. I've only just bought the Generals Handbook from the first Generals Handbook, so I'm a bit disappointed to find I'm going to have to replace it, but the collector in me is not upset at all.
Well, and also the bit of you that only paid £15 for it.
Yeah. £15. I think is entirely reasonable.
Yeah.
Do you know what it reminded me of, Dan? Do you remember a while back there was a Warhammer Fantasy book called the Generals Compendium?
Yes.
It was written by the guys over in Gamesworkshop America, and it was essentially a whole book dedicated to running campaigns. It really reminded me of that. And I loved that book, the Generals Compendium. So it was nice to be reminded of it. I quite literally went out and got it off the shelf and read that as well. So it was a nice reminder. But what an idea, the Generals Handbook. I'm really impressed with it as a concept.
Yeah, it's interesting. Brad, friend of ours, Brad, and I had a conversation about the Generals Handbook and whether we thought the Games Workshop planned it all along, or whether it was a response to the fact that when Age of Sigmar first launched, it wasn't met with the huge hurrah and excitement that perhaps was expected.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't really care because it's amazing. It's an amazing concept. It's great to see embracing of all the different ways that people might want to play the game. Broken into the 3 primary ways, being bought into 40k as well. The really nice thing as well is, okay, so some of the points now have started to appear in the back of the books. I think the Blades of Khorne book and the Stormcast Eternals have points in. But the General's Handbook allows them to look at how the game has performed on the tournament scene and competitive scene over the year, and make adjustments if they're needed, and respond to their players, and create a game which is more enjoyable for those competitive players. Because whilst, some people will be happy to just go, we'll 4+ it, and that's great. And quite often I'll say that to people, but that's not for everyone. People want to know what is the rule. I take a lot of joy from trying to sieve through the rules and work out actually what does that mean? How does that work? And it's very frustrating when you can't know. So I'm really pleased to see the General's Handbook. I think the fact it's only 15 quid is fantastic, because you wouldn't want to buy a new full rulebook every year, but buying the General's Handbook, which is very broad, is fine. I'm sure I read something about there's going to be siege rules in this one, because a lot of the Path to Glory stuff is moved over into the battle tomes, so it doesn't feature so heavily in the General's Handbook.
Yes.
So presumably still taking lots of feedback from the community. I'm sure they mentioned that in the article about it. Not sure when we're going to see it, but it's good to see that Age of Sigmar hasn't been forgotten. I'll be interested to see what changes it makes. Ben and I were discussing before we started recording that. So when the new Stormcast book came out, I had to change my army, rip some arms off some dudes and make some adjustments, which people found very funny locally, because they told me, well, you shouldn't be trying to make the most powerful list then, should you? So I had to make
that's
some
what people
changes.
do.
Well, yes, it depends what you want.
Try to make the most powerful list.
From the outset, so I love the Mortal Realms. I love the setting. To find out more, listen to episode 1. And I get very excited. I really do love the setting, but what I really love about the game is I feel like I can play in a competitive manner, not be a douche, and actually still have fun. Because I like the challenge. I like the tactical minutiae of, moving my men and getting the placement right. I really enjoy that, and I enjoy the fact that the game's quite fluid and smooth and lets you enjoy that as well.
Yes.
It's really good. So, General's Handbook 2017. Very exciting for me. Ben, you've not... Well, we're going to play some Age of Sigmar this weekend, aren't we?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, no, not hopefully. We're definitely going to play some Age of Sigmar this weekend, because I'm really actually excited to just take my gloves off and get going with it, because it's I haven't managed to convince Jo to play me yet. She kind of
Age of Sigmar skirmish, mate. That's what you need.
Yeah, and the guys at the club were playing skirmish the last Friday, and they were really enjoying that. So, there's some interesting questions about actually what is the model limit for skirmish, and
Well, it's done on an amount of renown, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So you pay renown for your models, and the list is in the back of the skirmish book.
Yeah.
For the cost of renown. Although it's weird because it suggests in the campaign you start with a renown of 25.
Yes.
But for many of the armies, because you have to take a hero. So, for example, I wanted to do an undead warband, and a necromancer is 22 renown.
Days. You're just down the dark path, weren't you?
So I could have had a necromancer and a skeleton. That would have been my warband.
Yes. Well, that's because necromancers are beardy.
Yeah, but the reason that I was only doing it so other people had someone to fight.
Yeah, does anyone believe that anymore? I don't think they do.
Look, I've got 3,500 points of Stormcast looking at me, all painted. I definitely praise Sigmar.
And they're all shaking their heads in disappointment.
Yeah, they're all very, very sad.
Yeah, only the faithful, Dan, and you clearly aren't. Sorry, mate.
Oh, I can't believe you've just said that. I can't believe you just said that. Ben. Oh. Who shall cast down the forces of chaos?
Not you.
Only the faithful. Yeah, I love that. That's why all my guys are silver.
Hey, Generals Handbook, going back to the topic before we go off on one again. Yeah, I really liked the last one, and I'm hoping the new one is as good.
Oh, I nearly forgot to talk about Don't let me forget to talk about allegiance abilities.
Oh, go on then.
Now?
Yes, why not? Go on.
Allegiance abilities! So, the thing that I really was excited about when I was reading the article about the new Generals Handbook is they're going to expand the allegiance abilities. So, allegiance abilities in Age of Sigmar give a lot of flavour to your army, and they give you some additional abilities, funny that can govern how your army works or fights on the tabletop.
Yes.
I really like that because it gives you cool flavour, and it adds into the synergies you can build. So the Stormcast allegiance ability is the thing that lets them come down on lightning bolts. So I'm really interested to see, because at the moment, the armies that only have access to the Generals Handbook allegiance abilities are definitely, there is a step difference between them and the armies that have got some of the newer books. So the Blades of Khorne and the Stormcast Eternal book particularly have a lot more stuff in. The Sylvan F book has a fair bit more. Karajon Overlords, they've got quite a bit more. I'm just looking on my shelf over there to remind myself. So it'll be really nice to see those expanded out, and I'm just excited to get in there and see what little rules are in there. Particularly, Ben's going to cry. Particularly around the death faction, because I'd quite like to do a death. Well, I need to do my Khorne first, but I would like to do a death faction. Like particularly the malignants and all the spirity people. I like that idea of lost souls wandering the realms of the mortal realms.
Did you see that model of the Karajon flying ship being held up by the ghosts?
Yes.
Oh, it's outstanding. I'm going to note that down to go on our Facebook page.
I'm interested to know. You remember you can buy those little blimps, remote control blimps. Have you seen those?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a conversion opportunity there. I'm convinced.
I have seen someone convert the corkscrew so it's moving.
Yeah, I saw you posted that to me, and I was like, "Oh my days, that's amazing!"
Excellent.
The only thing that's disappointing is it wasn't actually steam powered.
That somebody will. That will happen.
So, it's a bit of a shorter visit to the Mortal Realms this week, guys, because we got very excited in the 40k segment.
I think you wanted to talk about Silver Tower, though, didn't you, Dan?
Well, I was going to talk about Silver Tower, dude, but I thought I would save Silver Tower because we're actually, my gaming group locally, we're on the cusp, we're just over halfway through Silver Tower, and so I was hoping to report back to it and chat about it once we'd pushed through those missions a little bit more. But needless to say, I'm playing as a Stormcast. He is either great or shite in each game, and the Chaos Champion is an absolute legend.
He's not a Chaos Champion. He's a human champion. Yeah, He is just human. That's important to point out, because then I can play with him and not feel dirty.
Oh, okay.
He's a human tribesman that just happens to like skulls.
And calls himself the Chaos Marauder.
No. He calls himself the chief of the Dunedain or the Rohirrim or whatever fantastical name.
Right, I see.
Rather than the Chaos, because he's just far too badass. And that model is just outstanding. Absolutely love him.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it?
Anyway, so we'll move on then, guys, and we're going to move into our next segment, Into the Wild. We're going to talk about a few other games, so we're going to get ourselves a cup of tea, and we'll see you in a minute.
Cheers, guys. Okay, welcome back, guys. The drop pod is hurtling towards its final destination, where we get to go and slay some heretics or some loyal imperialists, depending on whether it's me or Ben you're talking to. Or maybe just slay, fight each other and then have a big man hug. But anyway, on our way there, we're just popping off into the wilds, where we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other games we play. So this segment, each time we put one out, is going to be our sort of wild card, really. It's our chance to talk about something outside of the realms of Games Workshop, or maybe tag something extra in that is about Games Workshop. So I know Ben in particular wanted to talk a little bit about X-Wing, because he started playing that, and also the Predator game that I mentioned at the start there. So Ben, X-Wing.
Yeah, X-Wing. So X-Wing was something I picked up at Christmas with some of my Christmas money. Unfortunately, last Christmas, but never really got around to playing it. And X-Wing's got a bit of a reputation at the moment because it stole the best-selling board game from wargaming board game from 40k for a period of time, which is really quite an interesting thing. And it's probably got a lot to do with why Games Workshop has changed an awful lot and made some big sort of changes to the 40k rules recently. Because X-Wing was an incredibly easy game to pick up and really, really fun and really, really tactical. Played it just a few ships, one X-Wing versus 2 TIE fighters against Alexander, one of my mates, who unfortunately lives in Brighton, so we don't get to play against each other that often. And I really enjoyed it, Dan. I really, really did. There is a dark joy in not having to paint the models. I know.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
As a hobbyist,
but that is not. You don't need to be. So the way I saw that, because I've unsurprisingly got some X-Wing, quite a lot of X-Wing. I think I've got 6 TIE fighters, and 3 or 4 of the X-Wings, and a load of other stuff as well. A Millennium Falcon.
You've got to have the Millennium Falcon. It's just
sorry.
The Millennium Falcon is a must-have. It's a quality little thing.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? It's awesome. So, the way I see it is, it just saves painting time for painting other stuff, because then I can get on with painting some of my Warhammer stuff. But and the models aren't rubbishly painted either, are they?
No, they're not. They really, really aren't. And I mean, I would literally throw my toys out of my pram if Games Workshop went to pre-painted models. That would be devastating for me. That would take some real selling. But you're right. As a extra game to pick up, it takes away a huge barrier. I can spend money on X-Wing and not have to worry about it sitting in a box for 10 years, not getting painted.
Absolutely.
And I can just get it out and play with it, and it means, like you said, I can focus on painting my Games Workshop stuff, which takes up all of my time, frankly, all of my hobby time. So, really enjoyed that, and the rule set is it's very slick, really, very, very good. Quite easy to understand why it's caught on. As easy to pick up game, the access is really easy into it. And me and Alex were playing for 10 minutes before we cottoned on to basically most of the rules. and there's two rule sets. There's an easy to use rule set, and then there's an advanced rule set. And the easy to use rule set was fun as well. I think you could play the game forever just using that rule set and not be too bothered at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's a really good dynamic. I love the way it works, especially with the movement dials. I think that's really clever.
Yeah.
I actually prefer Armada, which is the one that they've done with the bigger ships. I think that's just it runs so nice and it's so stately. And when you see the Imperial Star Destroyer, and that is a big model, and it looks fantastic. But yeah, X-Wing is a very good game, easy to pick up and play. A lot of counters and tokens. You need little divider things to keep everything in. And interestingly, that game mechanic has been used by Wizards of the Coast for their Star Trek Attack Wing game, and there's a Dungeons and Dragons, like dogfighting dragons type thing, which uses it as well. And elements of it. I've not played this myself, but Fantasy Flight have recently launched a fantasy massed battles fantasy war game. And it uses some of those mechanics as well.
Oh, right.
Some of the movement stuff. So it's pretty wide range. It's been very successful, that game mechanic.
Yeah.
And like you say, it is easy to see why it's done so well. And I think, or I would hazard a guess that what it did was open someone's eyes at Games Workshop to the potential of the competitive gaming market, because certainly before recent changes, there seemed to be a negative view towards that competitive market, and we weren't really bothered too much about that competitive market.
Yes, yeah.
And that's massively changed. And X-Wing, it's got, well, you'd be daft if you didn't look at what your competitors were doing and at least try and learn something.
Yeah,
that would be foolish. So thank you, X-Wing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think I don't think I'd be taking too far of a leap of faith to say that it hasn't impacted on how Games Workshop has dealt with 40k.
Oh, definitely. Well, so there are lots of podcasts that talk about this, and we could go on for ages about the journey, the Games Workshop journey between Age of Sigmar and what we've just seen with 40k, and it's a fantastic one, and hopefully one of real success. And it's funny, actually, we talked last week about how frustrated you get at some of the Facebook posts, and I've seen a lot of them, and I must say a lot less negative ones with 40k than I saw with Age of Sigmar. A considerable amount less, but ultimately you see the ones that always make me chuckle is the ones about Age of Sigmar is failing, or 40k is failing, or that's not going to sell, that's rubbish, blah blah blah. And my response is always, well, let's not get out of our pram about it. Let's just wait until the financial reports come out, because whether or not this is sad or no, I love reading the financial reports that come out about Games Workshop and looking at how they're doing. Yeah, all right, it's sad, but I like it because I like business and and I like hobbies, so particularly interests me. And the stuff that's been coming out lately is all positive. So that for me puts people in their place that are, claiming the end is nigh.
Yeah, no, I don't think the end is nigh at all. I think anyone who seriously believes that is barking. But we've gone off topic. We're back out of the world.
We're back talking about Games Workshop in our segment about other games. So go on then, Predator. I know
Predator.
You're very excited about this game.
I was. So I'm probably as much of a fan of the Alien universe as I am of the 40k universe. And the problem, of course, being that at the moment certain film directors keep sodding around with the canon. But for me, the best film was the second one. So to release a game where the models are exceptional and reflect that Aliens, the second film, it's just fantastic. I bought the box set. There is only the box set, really. The price point is actually not bad. The models are pretty reasonably priced and phenomenally detailed. I would say they're actually probably too detailed because some of the structural details on them are so so thin that they're weak, if you know what I mean. You can be holding the model to paint it, and you've bent the smart cannon frame, which is frustrating.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning.
But actually, when you take away the side, the models really are absolutely stunning. And they've just re-released the box set because Prodos, if we're going to talk about game companies that are struggling with feedback, Prodos really have ballsed up their customer relations from the ground off, really, because a lot of their Kickstarter stuff has yet to be shipped. If you can believe that, it's been out for years. They've on the second edition of the box set, and the original Kickstarter stuff is yet to be shipped. And I probably...
How does that even happen?
I know. I mean, it's phenomenal, really. So if people are moaning about Games Workshop, anyone who's into the Prodos models is just going to ignore you because the difference is just ridiculous. But the new box set is single-piece resin models, as good a quality as the multi-part in a lot of ways, and you can just get them straight out of the box and play with them. And it essentially means if you've got the old box set and you buy the new box set, you've got two different squads of Marines, so that's pretty cool. Haven't afforded to be able to buy the second set yet, but...
so what price point is that set at then?
I think the set was 80, I think.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's good quality stuff. I think it's 80. I might be doing a discredit. But the thing the model that really did sort of the icing on the cake at the moment for me is the Cheyenne gunship. So the Cheyenne gunship was the absolute dog's testicles for me in the film when I first saw it. Wings opening up, coming down in for its landing. It just took my imagination when I was a kid. And the model is absolutely brilliant. It's a bitch to put together though, Dan. It's got so many parts. The quality isn't quite as good as Forge World, even though Prodos claim that it is. The parts just don't sit as well together. It's taking some modelling to get it together. But the wings articulate. The ramp is usable. Really, really quite excited to get that finished. But it's on hold at the moment because I don't want to paint it until I've got my airbrush, because I think it would look shite painted by brush. I want to get good with my airbrush so I can have a proper shot at it, give it a decent job. Disappointed about it is the fact that they've made no inclination whether they're going to do the APC to go in the bottom, which I think is a real shame, actually, because if you're like me, you like the cinematic element of games. So landing the dropship on the table and the APC coming out the bottom, or just having the ship on the table as part of the scenery with the APC there, that's a big thing. And they haven't done it. They've got, by the sound of it, no intention of making an APC to scale that fits in, and I think that's a bit of a shame, really. But
I suppose one of the challenges whenever you've got a game which is dealing with a license,
yes,
is that there's so many hoops to jump through for them, isn't there?
There is, and that's been a big problem for them. Fox have put up a lot of hoops for them to jump through. Their rulebook practically needed to be redesigned because they weren't allowed to use some things that they put in there. They weren't allowed to expand on the background or anything. Their intention was to have a real fleshed out background book like 40k. Never happened, unfortunately, which I think is a real shame. And
it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I suppose, isn't it, with the old? Because you've got the fact that actually their game it's a really popular license.
Yep.
Is going to help drive sales.
It's a ball and chain at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it has to be said, Fox, shame on them, because, I mean, just for goodness sake, is it really that important to be such arse about it? And for a lot of people, that game would be doing better, would be selling better had Fox not sort of hindered them, and Fox would have been getting royalties from it. So I don't understand the logic behind it at all. but then IP is always a difficult minefield, and Games Workshop have had their problems with IP, and people have been quite disappointed with how they've reacted to some situations. I can't say I blame either side. I can see both point of views, really. But in this one, I think it was, whereas in some of the Games Workshop cases, it was a lose for Games Workshop. This would have been a win-win for both Prodos and Fox, and I don't really understand why the behaviour was the way it was. It's really disappointing. And as a result, as good as the sets are, and as great as the models are, and as great as the game seems to be, again, I haven't managed to convince Joe to play me at it yet. And if you're listening, Joe, we need to start playing these games, because you moan about me buying stuff and not using it. It's your fault.
Mate, you need to get what is it that I've got? So, Hey, That's My Fish is one Harriet and I enjoy. Carcassonne we enjoy.
And you like the Settlers one, don't you?
Settlers of Catan.
Yeah.
Well, we do. I did like it, but after I lost 31 games of it against Harriet when we were on holiday in St Ives, we're not allowed to play games that involve
you
dice.
Losing.
No, dice, because I get really angry. I don't mind if Harriet outplays me, but when I believe the dice have turned against me, I lose my shit a little bit, to put it that way. It is quite funny. Although we have been able to play a game called Waggle Dance, which is by Grubbling Games, who are actually based down in Penzance, I think.
Are they the same guys who did Cornish Settlers?
Yes, they are. Cornish Smuggler. Yeah, which is a fantastic game. So we have played that, and that does have dice in it. And generally, there's been I've not had any strops recently on that. It's good. Good game. You got to collect the honey and drop it. No, collect the nectar and then use it to make honey. It's a good game.
So that's on that note, I think I've had a mini rant about Prodos and the love-hate relationship I have with the versus Predator game at the moment.
And I'm now talking about gathering honey, nectar to make honey. So definitely, thankfully, the drop pod is nearing the end of its journey. We are preparing to go forth, ladies and gents, and take the Emperor's vengeance, or the fine word of chaos, to the citizens of the 41st millennium.
Intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are hoping to put out another one in a couple of weeks. Thank you ever so much. I think 55 likes so far on the Facebook page. So to all of you guys, thank you very much for the support. Really good to see you interacting with some of the stuff we're putting up. Please let us know if there's things you want us to talk about, you want us to try, you want us to not talk about. Go on about. We really do appreciate the feedback. As we said early on, it's all about building that community.
Yeah, definitely.
We've been the 2Ps in a pod. Thank you very much for listening, and we will catch you next time.
See you next time, guys.